I am the Wormhole CSM. I was elected with the other 9 representatives this couple months ago. Specifically, I ran on the Wormhole platform. We have had a handful of Wormhole CSMs in the past. We haven't had one in a little while. And so we were able to get it done this time, which is pretty cool. And of course, I want to thank everybody for that to get started. I want to do a couple things ahead of time just to kind of get us all in the get some housekeeping things taken care of first, so everybody knows how this is going to go. So this is a town hall. It's going to be kind of a hybrid between being a town hall and being a Q&A. I would prefer it to be more of a town hall than a Q&A, but we're going to try and keep things moving along as quickly as possible. There are way more of you here than I was actually expecting, which is great. I'm so glad that you guys are here, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your day on a Sunday to show up and be part of this. A couple years ago, the Wormhole CSM Noob Man from Hard Knocks used to do these kind of town halls once a month, and I want to get us back in the habit of doing that. I think that there's plenty for us to talk about. When it comes to, I think Exuki's maybe do these too. He can confirm that for me. Either way, there's plenty for us to talk about. Whenever we sit down to do this, I think the plenty happens in a month that we could sit down and just have an opportunity to catch up and see where we're all at. And I can give you guys some information about what we're doing as the CSM. You guys can ask questions, voice some opinions about where you think we are with the state of the game. And yeah, so what we're going to do, I'm going to start off. I'm going to have a couple minutes here right at the gate as people are still filing in. I'm going to make some comments. I have some prepared statements about sort of what we've been up to. And then once we're done with that, I'll open the floor for people who want to, you can raise your hand at the bottom. If you look down at the bottom of the screen, you can request to speak. That'll put you in a little queue on the right-hand side of the screen over here. And I can bring you guys in from there. So you can talk there. I'm going to ask that everybody please try and keep their, so we're going to do one of two things. You can either ask me a question. You can actually ask a general question for the CSM. And we have a couple here in the audience right now, which I'm super thrilled about. If you see one of them and want to ask them a question, you feel free to, and I can call them up as well. I know Arsia Elkin's here, Brisker Ball, Kazanir, Luke Annanen also wanted to be here, but was called away because of some work stuff. So, glad he was able to, get that taken care of, but unfortunately will not be in attendance today. So, but please, whenever you're talking, we're going to ask that you please try and keep your questions or comments, as short as possible, preferably under 20 seconds. If you would like a response to a question, please make that clear ahead of time so that we know we're not just hanging here awkwardly wondering whether or not it's a question. And I do ask that everybody please try and speak as clearly as possible. We're recording this as well. We are also streaming on Talking in Stations. Thank you to Rain for arranging that. It was extremely helpful. We want to make sure that we have a good record of these for reference, not only for the general public to come in and see what has been discussed in these, but also for the purposes of the CSM. This sort of thing, we did this during the election campaign season. We did the Outfoxed Teddy and Ashy from Outfox hosted a Wormhole CSM there too. So we had the opportunity to talk about some issues with people, and those comments are all really useful. I mean, this is this process is not just as simple as a group of 10 people in a shadowy room talking about ways to affect the meta. It really is a back and forth dialogue, I feel like, with the community and with the developers and with the other CSM, and having as much information and as much back and forth between us and the greater community is really important. So that's why we want to get through as many people as we can today. It's going to be, hopefully we'll be able to move right along, but anyway, that's the format. So before we get started, one more thing. I want to be clear about ahead of time. I'm going to be as transparent as I can be, and the other CSM, if they get up here to talk, they're going to probably want to do the same. We're not actively trying to hide anything from anybody. However, we are restricted by the NDA, which can be frustrating at times, considering there are things that we know that we aren't allowed to share with you guys. And things that we have talked about that we aren't allowed to share. So if I feel like we're being bound by the NDA, or a question will be restricted by the NDA, I'm going to try and answer as transparently as I can, given the bounds of what we can talk about. But it is very important that we don't breach that. And so if it becomes obvious that I can't talk about something, I will make sure that it's not just because I don't like you, it's because there's an NDA reason for it. So to get started, I want to first talk about the CSM as a whole. We have 10 representatives. Shocker, I know. 10 of us were elected. I feel very strongly, personally, about the group we were able to assemble. I know there were some concerns early on from a lot of people about the makeup of the CSM. And there are a lot of people who would have preferred there to be more independent candidates on the CSM. I mean, there's no secret. There are 8 null set candidates on, and just 2 independents, being myself and Arsia. However, I do want to assuage some people's concerns about that when I say that I have not gotten the impression through anything that has been said or done over the last couple of weeks that has given me the idea that there is anything malicious going on, or any kind of strong arming happening on the part of the null set candidates. I feel very strongly, that everybody who is on our group right now, we recognize that there is a common concern here, which is the ongoing state of the game, the ongoing health of Eve as a whole. And most of our discussions are and almost entirely about what can we do now in the short term, and then in the long term, to get the game into a healthier place, and in a place where we can still be talking about Eve in 5-6 years. So first of all, the 3 returning CSM have been a huge help. Those being Bruce Ball, Kenneth Feld, and Arsia Elkin. Arsia slightly less so, but I'll get to her in a second. Brisk and Kenneth have been on the CSM a couple times. Brisk, effectively ageless as the universe, and has been a huge help. Tons of experience on that part, not just with how these discussions need to be happening, but also who we need to be talking to, how we need to talk to the members of CCP that we get to talk to, how to engage in those conversations with the devs. Their experience is incredibly important. It is. There was a big shakeup between this year and last year in terms of the CSM. There are 7 new candidates, and 8-ish if you count Arsia, who you shouldn't. She was a huge help last year, but her term was not a full term. That's a huge shakeup in terms of the CSM. Very rarely has there ever been anything even close to that. So having those 2 specifically there to act as kind of the foundation of what we were working on, extremely helpful. And those guys are putting in just as much work as anybody else to progress with our goals, and get these conversations out there. And they've been a huge help for us. Arsia is great. I'm so thrilled to have her here. When she ran last year, she was the candidate just ahead of me, that got on when ProGod left the CSM. And so I was a little bitter at the time, but with the benefit of hindsight, she is a huge boon to our efforts, especially with the upcoming faction warfare update. Her experience in that area is paramount to our ability to communicate concerns and questions, and collaborate effectively with the devs about that. And I'm thrilled to death that she's here. The rest of the candidates, those being Kazanir, Angry Mustache, Pando, Luke Ennanen, Storm Delay, and Jinx Declare, are all incredible. I mean, they have done, I think early on, Brisk made a comment in our personal chat about how much effort everybody has seemed to be putting in right at the gate, and that is true from my experience as well. Everybody is clearly, not taking this lightly. We recognize the responsibility that we have, in our part as a mediator between the player base and the developers. And everybody is, we hit the ground running pretty quickly, and have been lucky to, get these things going as fast as we can go. We recognize that time is of the essence when it comes to what we can accomplish here, and everybody has been great. I've had great conversations already, especially with Pando and with Jinx about content, Storm Delay, and Luke, and as FCs and leaders of their coalitions have been huge parts of when we talk about how can we get people, more people out into space, can compel more people to be playing the game more frequently. And then Angry and Kaz are huge help with their ability to, summon up numbers that show, this thing or that thing, and then talk about ways forward, especially in terms of the economy, the current state of the greater financial ecosystem of the game. I honestly feel that if we had tried to, there may have been some other candidates that I would have liked to have seen, but I would not want to get rid of any of the ones we've got now. If we could have had 12, 13, 14 people in the CSM, then maybe that would have been a different option to bring in some other candidates. But I really do feel strongly that the group that we've got is a great group, and it is an honor to work with them. So some things we've been doing ahead of time, as we get into this. Early on, we were able to get into communication with the devs on the Slack. It took them a little while to get us going, partly because this is the summer, and CCP is much slower during the summer than they are during fall, winter, and spring to an extent, because that's when everybody takes vacation. And so a lot of times when we've gone to talk about something or asked who should we be talking to in one case or the other, they'll come back and say, oh, you need to talk to so-and-so. They'll be back, from vacation in August. So that is still something that we're dealing with now. We, more and more as we get further into the term, there are more and more people coming around, and we've had the opportunity to talk with a handful of devs already, either before their vacations or since they've come back. And our two CSM specific CCP representatives, those being CCP Swift and CCP Zealous, have been a great asset for us when it comes to finding out who we need to talk to and what we need to talk about, and organizing those meetings. We've had a handful of meetings. I'm not sure exactly how many off the top of my head. I've been able to attend all but one, and the one I had a meeting I had to go to for work, so it was kind of unavoidable. But all of our meetings, I feel like we've been able to accomplish quite a bit. Even if it's just gathering information from the devs, there are instances where, we might not be able to give a lot of input, but there is a lot of intel that we can gather, and those can better help inform our opinions and our positions going into further discussions. So that's been great. One of the first things we did after we all got together was kind of circle the wagons. We've talked a lot about how we need to what short-term things we need to be doing to put the game in a healthier position. We created a spreadsheet of different ideas. Everybody kind of pitched a handful to talk about, like, in your opinion, what do you think needs to be done to get us there? And there's a variety of things that we all are kind of in agreement about. Primarily, I think there are a lot of concerns about the state of income when it comes to like the MER and what we're seeing from that, and some regions of space that have been pressured out either because of changes that have been made in the past or just general meta shifts. We've talked a lot about content and a lack thereof in some cases. We've talked about some balance issues, especially when it comes to the hack meta in nullsec, the abundance of marauders that we're seeing in space. These are all things that have kind of come up, and we've talked about, these are the primary issues that need to be addressed when it comes to CCP. and what they need to go move going forward. In terms of what we've actually been able to just pitch so far, I'm just going to go up and say it's been limited. CCP is definitely all in right now on the faction warfare update, which I'm going to get this one out ahead of time too. Without being able to talk about any details, there is a I think a dev blog coming next week that will explain more about that update. But based on what we saw, I think in our first meeting with CCP Aurora, it's if we get something close to what we saw, then it's going to be great, and we feel really strongly about that. Arsia was able to give a lot of great feedback on those systems during that meeting. They're certainly putting in the work by all accounts to make that successful, and I think that they recognize the same thing that a lot of us recognize, which is this is a huge point in the history of the game. If you're talking about important turning points, this is going to be an important one. They need to hit this. We need to make sure this goes off as a success. Just based on where the game is right now, they cannot stand, or they cannot. Well, personally, I do not believe they can handle another huge flop. And I trust the team that is working on it right now. They're putting in a lot of hard work currently on that. And we will know more about it, or be able to talk more about it here in the next couple of weeks. But definitely something that needs to be people need to be looking out for. It's going to be a huge benefit for all of us if we get something close to what we were shown. So that will move us to the again, a couple other things that we've done since we got started. The Fact War presentation was like the first thing we did right at the gate. We were able to CCP Aurora set us down to talk about things that we're going to be seeing, and we feel really great about that. We've been able to in terms of things we've gotten adjusted, there have been a couple things that you guys already know about, a couple things that are still in the works. The issue with gate rats and nullsec was addressed pretty quickly. I think they were working on that to a certain extent, maybe right as we were coming in, and we were able to pitch some ideas there as well. That was maybe not the solution that everybody would have preferred, in terms of moving those rats to the new barren asteroid fields that I think are on CC right now. But given how it was explained to us, this is not the worst solution they could have come up with. I think in the short term, it's something that is going to suffice. I know a lot of people would have preferred they just put the belts back in space, and they have some internal reasons, I'm sure, why that's not going to be the way they do it right out the gate. Whether or not that continues to be the policy, I guess, is left to be seen. But that was great. As far as wormhole specific stuff was concerned, you guys know that we've already addressed the issue of we addressed the issue first of the rats not scramming Bastion Marauders. This was just a straight up bug. Pretty early, we were able to get that done. This is something that I think probably had less to do with us directly. We were certainly part of that conversation as they were working on it. But at the same time, this is, I think, something that was pitched to them probably just before we got in as well. And when we got there, we were able to kind of talk about what that would look like and how that's going to be worked on. So that was a good one to get. I know a lot of people have had some concerns about the way that Marauders were too slippery, especially in PvE. And it was people who were hunting crabs were having a really hard time catching crabs because they were so easy to get off with a Boucher. Knowing now that there will at least be, unless you're able to clear that tackle, at least be one tackle on grid to hold them down, I think has made a lot of people feel a lot more strongly about that play style. We were able, I feel confident that doesn't break Marauder ratting by any stretch of the imagination. Marauders are still exceptionally strong or hard to hold down. But being able to shift this one little thing slightly in favor of hunters, I feel like will go a long way towards balancing out that play style. So just to address a handful of other small things, core concerns. Again, we've been pretty good as a CSM about approaching more or less from a unified front. We certainly haven't had any major disagreements yet. We were able to talk a little bit about the the content updates, or rather the community safety update that they put out not too long ago. And they pitched us that ahead of time. We were able to give some feedback there. Obviously, that is a paramount concern for everybody. We want people to feel safe while they're playing the game, and we want people to feel confident that they are not in any considerable danger or of either harassment or other unwanted attention while they're playing Eve. The only unwanted attention you should get is a lock on your ship. And then a subsequent kill mail. So that's just we were able to get involved with that, which is great. We were appreciative of it. I haven't gotten the impression that CCP is necessarily hiding anything from us. Certainly, it's been a little eye opening to see how their whole system runs over there. I feel strongly that there's still room for us to get things done. I feel like we can accomplish some things, and if we're able to do so, it will be because we've been able to approach it from a more unified front, and kind of all been on the same page, which again has been the case so far. Hopefully, will be the case going forward. Other than that, I don't have a lot of other major things. I mostly want to hear from you guys. We feel great about where we're at right now. We'll feel better probably as more people come back from vacation. We'll have more people to talk to, and more things we can get into in the weeds about. But as far as the first couple weeks go, we feel great about it. We feel like we're in a pretty good spot. Obviously, there are still great concerns about the game, concerns about the player count, concerns about the state of the economy. These are all things that are being worked on, and all things that we are continuing to get feedback for. But in terms of what we're able to accomplish right now, a lot of it will depend on who we're able to get in touch with when folks start coming back from vacation. So with that being said, I'm now going to open it up to you guys. Again, if you want to ask questions, you can certainly ask questions. Just make sure that I know that you're asking a question when you ask a question. If you just want to say something, just say it. Please try and keep it as brief as possible. This is all just, like I said, all going on the record. So this is something that we'll be able to use as an asset for other conversations later on. But yeah, that is the end of my prepared remarks. I'm more than willing to hear from you guys. The floor is yours. Go ahead and throw those hands up if you want to get involved in that. All right. Daz, 901 or 9001, come on up. How are you doing?
Hey, Mark, I'm good, buddy. How's you?
I'm doing well, thank you. What do you got?
Question. Capitals. Trying to catch capitals in wormholes seems incredibly difficult, especially when rolling them or trying to catch them due to their speed and not having a Higgs rig. Have we got any kind of plan to give us more content around capitals in high-class wormholes?
Yeah, so I would. I'll move you back down. Just as a personal philosophy, it is. I think this is a common sentiment with a lot of people, especially people who live in high class space. The short answer is yes. As a goal, I would like to see more capitals in high class. More capitals ratting, more capitals fighting. Capitals are fun to kill. People come out for capitals. It is much easier to get fleet pinged up when you're talking about, hey, there's a dread tackled, as opposed to, hey, I've got a single paladin and it's gone. So yes, in terms of what we could possibly get from CCP, there's not too much I can talk about just yet because we haven't really had too many conversations about it. But that is certainly a priority, at least as far as I'm concerned. Exuki, you are next up. If you guys don't know, Exuki is a former Wormhole CSM, and I'm so thrilled you're here. How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for asking, Mark.
For sure. What you got?
So I'll ask a slightly led question with the main primary hope of just helping educate everybody else that's in here listening. Would you say that CCP has given you the impression that they have a plan for wormhole space? And the full context of my question really is the number one trouble I had, and I suspect Brisk and potentially the other CSMs would echo the sentiment, is when you bring up stuff to CCP about this is not good or it could be better in wormhole space, the number one obstacle we ran into was they'll look at it, they'll go, huh, yeah, and then they can't quite make a decision on if they want to change it or not, because when I was on CSM, no one at CCP ever seemed to actually have an idea of what it's supposed to look like.
Right. So that's a really good point. I guess the short answer to it is that either by virtue of not being there long enough to really form or get an informed opinion, or just because of what you just said, I have not gotten that impression. I don't know necessarily if there is a long-term strategy for wormholes as a whole, or if there's a plan for upcoming content updates. I think it is arguable that there are probably people who prefer there not to be a plan and just want to see more stuff happening, and otherwise want CCP to stay off the wheel on that one. But we also have the benefit of CCP Aurora is on the dev team now, and she is, or has tunes in wormhole space. So if there's anybody there right now who would know better about what the long-term plan is, it would be her. Of course, we haven't really had a chance to talk too much to her about it, that specifically, because faction warfare, but that is certainly something that I would like to sit down and talk to her about here in the next couple of weeks. Gideon, you are invited. Come on up. How you doing, sir?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, for sure. What's up?
Okay, yeah, all good. I just want to ask, is power projection addressed in the low-sec update that is upcoming?
Power projection. This is in the short term, there's not much I can say about it, because this involves talking about systems that we know about that are going to be in the faction warfare update. I am going to answer that question. I'm going to try and see if we can't get, I'll make a note of that here too. Hang on one second. I'm going to make a note of that to see if we can't get something about it put in the dev blog that's going to come out this week, to make it, to be able to answer that question a little bit more accurately. But in terms of what we can talk about right now, there's not too much there currently. Alvin Alvin Smurf, come on up. You are next. What can I do for you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello. Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, I have just a question, do you think there will be a rebalance of free calls, you used to be able to roll them, but now you're not able to? Will they actually change it or not?
Sure. Okay, so frig holes. I'm going to move you back, but that's a good question to ask, and is a big concern for a lot of people. I can say right now we haven't talked about it internally yet. It may have come up once or twice in just our personal CSM discussions, just between ourselves and not with the devs. As far as I'm concerned, I would certainly like to see CCP try and do something creative with frig holes to introduce some counterplay that is actually counterplay and not just some busted eat income nonsense that works half the time, and actually give people an option there. But in terms of what we've actually been able to talk about, again, limited just by virtue of them being so focused on the things that they're focused on right now. So I wish I had a better answer, because I really want to get that addressed too, but nothing just yet. Drake, come on up. You are next. Hello, Drake.
Hello, my brother. How are you?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you doing?
Good. Just watching the England versus Germany finals.
Oh, nice. How's that going? Don't tell me about it. Tell me about
I won't spoil it. It's almost at the end now. But
very good.
I've kind of got two questions, one for Poshman, one for something else, but I'll
Sure.
guess the first bit unless someone else asks afterwards. There's a big issue with Poshman at the moment in that we've always had quite bad servers, and we think it's owing to the way the AI works in here. I've been working with Kenneth a little bit, going back and forth, and I think he's raised it to the CSM a few times, but I'm just wondering if CCP are quite aware of how bad it's getting. So just as a given example, you're looking at maybe 3 to 5 second delays on interactions now with the game in terms of locking. There's loads of desync issues, and we've also getting doubled up grids where people will disappear, like if they move so much as a kilometer away from you.
Right. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to move you back down. The issue of desync and Poshfin was one that we raised fairly early. I think it has been, I don't know if it was raised to the ecosystem team directly, or if this was just something we had kind of talked about in our discussions with community team members who we were interacting with early on. I know that they know about it. I don't know if this is something that's being actively worked on for sure. I would like to think that that's the case, but I cannot say that with any kind of certainty, because I know that's a big issue right now. And you know, we'd like to get that one sort of sorted out pretty quickly. I will continue to look at that, and I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can on that one. Nesu, you are up. Hello.
Can you hear me? Nice.
I can. How you doing?
Pretty good, thank you.
Of
so
course.
I have two questions. Do you think wormhole space is healthy as it is, and what would need to change?
Okay. Oh, those are the two questions. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So, do I think wormhole space is healthy? I think wormhole space is stable right now. I would not call it healthy. There are an abundance of things that I think are probably important to putting wormhole space in what I would consider a healthy place. If I were going to tier them, more content would be somewhere near the top, especially content that drives us further away from the eviction meta. Somewhere underneath that would be finding a way to get crabs out of J space, or as many crabs who don't live in J space out of J space. A lot of that has to do with the recent propensity for nullsec crabs to set up farms or be roaching sleeper sites in J space due to the sorry state of bounty payments currently in nullsec. So that is a primary concern and something that Kazanir and Angry Mustache have been putting a lot of numbers together for recently. That is a huge concern right now, and that is going to be up there. And also, and this is sort of a more general issue, the price increase on the subscription cost was problematic. I think a lot of people would probably agree with that. That has caused certainly a pretty significant numbers drop over the last couple of weeks. You know, we are working on trying to get more information about that from the developers. We haven't really had a chance to have that conversation yet either, but that would play into it as well. I mean, in my mind, wormhole space is healthy when we have abundant content, abundant resources we can fight over, and more players in J space. And right now, we're kind of being choked out in a couple of those areas. Things have settled a little bit, but I feel like we could be in a much stronger place with a handful of minor changes. Reddy, you are up. Hello, Reddy. You're back from vacation. Maybe. Do mics work differently where you are?
Does it work now? Yes, it works.
Yeah. Hello, Reddy. How are you?
Fucking Discord, fucking with my settings.
Man. It's wild, right?
Okay. Yep. So first of all, I wanted to say thank you for doing this, and you're the greatest.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And another question, and I don't know if you talked about this in your previous points, but because I came a little late. But I wanted to know if you're happy with what Marauders are doing right now to wormhole space with the pretty significant fleets of up to 20, and if you think this is good right now.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry. I was looking at another question. Go ahead.
Okay, so the Marauders, if they are the current meta evolving into like bringing 20 paladins and just fucking everything, right?
Yeah. Okay, this is a good question. And I knew this is going to come up at some point too, and I do want to address it. Marauders, man, are problematic. We are in kind of a mixed agreement about it. I think that there are certainly, there are people within the CSM who feel strongly that the Marauder meta isn't super broken currently, and just needs to be fine tuned. And then there are others who think that it is absolutely busted. Where we can find common ground there, we're still working on. I know CCP, just based on some vibes I've gotten from them, agree probably that there needs to be, at least in the very minimum, some tuning there. From my personal point of view, I don't like the Marauder meta as much as maybe some, not because I've gotten my cheeks clapped from it a handful of times, which I certainly have, but I've gotten my cheeks clapped by plenty of other doctrines in the past. That's just a thing that happens for me personally in my life. But when they announced the bulkhead change that increased the shield and armor, plate and extender bonuses, what I was really hoping to see was a lot more pirate battleship doctrines, a lot more Navy battleship doctrines, and a lot more T1 battleship doctrines as a whole, because I really like those doctrines and they are fun and there are a lot of variety there. Instead, what we have gotten is Paladins Online. For better or worse, and it's not to say I don't enjoy flying Marauders. I do, in small numbers, but I will admit that large groups of Marauders, especially in fleet settings, especially under triage, are extremely oppressive right now. And that's just there are no good answers for them. If this is something that needs to be addressed, certainly I'm hoping that we'll get a chance to have those conversations and look at it, because man alive, it is certainly disheartening to see 20 paladins on grid, and know that there's not, unless you're able to field equal or more numbers of Marauders, there's not really a good answer for it, or equal numbers of caps. That is a problem. We recognize it's a problem. And it's something that needs to be addressed hopefully soon. But again, this is another thing we would love to have more conversations about, but just because of summer, people being on vacation, we haven't had those opportunities yet. So nobody in the queue right now. If you guys want to continue to ask questions or make statements, feel free to fill it up. Oh, there you are. Kronos, you are up. Hello.
Hello. Is this thing on?
It is on. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for asking.
Of course. What's up?
Coming from a sort of software engineering background, I know how much the spaghetti from the POS code can hold back more exciting changes. I know many people aren't especially interested in it, but I would like to know how far along CCP is with untangling and removing it, and how heavily they'll prioritize it into the future.
Sure. Okay. So the long and short of it is, that is probably not something that they're going to tell us outright. So Eve is an old game. For everybody else who is maybe not aware, Eve is real old, and there are definitely systems in place currently that have continued to run almost the entire length of the game. CCP is in a constant battle between the trying to innovate and trying to improve the game, and also trying to keep it from going belly up, due to the certain archaic systems that still exist. I know that they are working on some systems that will help improve their ability to do certain things going forward, and make some changes that they would like to do, in a better way, or in an easier way, a more efficient way. But as far as what we actually know about the systems and what we're actually able to discern about, how those look, that's going to be a hard one for us to get from them. That's something they're probably going to hold pretty close to the vest. Drake, you are back up. Welcome back.
There you go.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Is it
I
muted?
can. Night.
So the other question I had was regarding injectors and banning people.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, I've noticed quite a consistent pattern of people who are either RMTing or import broadcasting that get loads of their alts banned, and they're back maybe less than a week later in the exact same ships they were before. This is obviously specific to Podgevin, but I know that it happens elsewhere as well. And the main reason that facilitates that is that the simply injectors are, even though they're increasing in price right now, they're just far too easy to get a hold of, and you can basically nullify any downside of having your alts banned.
Okay, so this is another tricky one, because as far as we know, to my understanding, CCP has maintained that they are continuing to work on the issue of RMT and the issue of botting and the issue of sort of structural safety of the game. As far as what is actually being done under the hood, there's not a whole lot that we can see about that. My best suggestion is going to be probably what they will tell you anyway, which is report. And if you see anything super egregious going, you can certainly send that to me or any of the other CSM. These are things that we talk about all the time, and certainly things that we can put in front of developers. In maybe a more direct way than a bug report would. But like I said, there's not an abundance of information we have to offer there, just because it's not something that has been discussed at length currently. Zeeks, you are up. Zeeks. I think it's Zeeks. Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. What can I do for you?
So a couple of questions ago, there was a comment about the faction battleships, and there was also some changes a little while ago with the Marauder update about the bash timers and some changes to industry. And I was just wondering, what's the feeling on that? And more comments on, say, the faction battleship usage and just in general with the industry changes. Are we seeing positive results with that in wormhole space or just in the game in general? Because a lot of that seemed to revolve a lot around more to do with the wormhole space consequences than in K-space.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so in terms of actual feedback we've been able to get from them about what they've seen from the industry changes as a whole, I think maybe Brisk or Kenneth could talk more about what they heard last year when those changes first went up. In terms of the battleship changes and then the structure changes that we've seen and how they've affected wormhole space. I've kind of gone on the record about saying I don't like the change, especially to Astras, because it removes a certain element of doubt from that process. I would prefer to see a different system. I understand what they're trying to do in terms of trying to cut down on structure spam, but that is not the way I would have preferred to go about it. As for the issue with talk about faction battleships and whether or not they how they feel about those, just not something we've heard a whole lot about just yet. Abu, hello Abu.
Hey Mark,
how are you, Abu?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing
what can I do for you? Talk to me, buddy.
So you guys have been talking with the big men about faction warfare. Are there any changes or mechanics that they're reworking that would find its way into affecting wormhole space, or what people choose to do within wormhole space?
Sure. Okay. So the short answer to that is no. At least not to my understanding. The long answer is that they are always working on improving the systems that they have in place, and like I said, are working on systems that could potentially, from CSM point of view, just talking about how things are implemented in one place and how they could potentially be implemented elsewhere. Are we going to see those systems implemented somewhere else? That has not been something that has been discussed. Is it possible? Potentially, but that's not something that we have, somebody on record saying, and even if we did have somebody on record saying, we probably would be able to talk about that. But I would say that it is certainly a thing that is possible, but not something that has come up directly. And actually, Arsia just pinged. Hello, Arsia.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. Did you want to talk about that?
All right, so based on what was presented at FanFest for faction warfare, the direction they seem to want to go is that faction warfare will be a vehicle through which changes that affect the entire game will be implemented. So I would not be surprised if faction warfare mechanics in the future are going to be introducing a lot of stuff that will be very relevant to wormholes, whether they be mechanics or structures or ships or anything like that. Basically, with the narrative storyline arcs and faction warfare changes as they were announced at FanFest, basically most of the new stuff coming should be coming through that medium, and that'll be affecting wormholes as well as everybody else.
Yeah, and we have heard to a certain extent too some feedback from whenever they talk about the new player experience and the stuff they're working on for the MPE systems. Those are all, like I said, those are all structures that they are putting in place that could potentially have rollover into other systems. But in terms of what those structures and how that would roll over, we haven't gotten a ton of feedback about that just yet. Okay, let me see. Up next, we have Daz. Daz, welcome back to the stage. What do you got?
Hey, Mark. Two quick questions. We discussed this before you was kind of put into CSM. So I'll give you an example. We had a very active day of trying to find content, and we probably opened 500-600 connections yesterday and found pretty much nothing. Has anything been discussed for potential content finding? And the other one is in terms of industry for wormholes. Obviously, like nullsec can be quite self-sufficient, but for wormholes, we have to go get ice, or we can only get into a shad through a frigate hull. Has there been any industry review for wormholes discussed?
Okay, this is actually, I'm glad you brought it up because I know that one of my directors is also pinging me like crazy about talking about industry stuff. I'm going to be really brief about this because the short answer is we don't really have any major responses yet from CCP about those issues. I think we have talked about planning, a meeting with some folks about ecosystems in general, to talk about industry and talk about the implications of changes that have happened in the past. As far as your first question goes about content, I have gone on record in the past saying that I would like to see systems put in place where wormholes, the way wormholes connect could be modified in such a way that wormholes of a certain activity level become slightly more likely to connect to other wormholes of a certain activity level or above. Whether or not that's something that we would actually ever see, it's really hard to say right now. How those systems would be implemented, that is a long way out, and potentially probably outside of the term of even my CSM. However, or unless you guys vote for me a second year, which you should. But either way, that's neither here nor there. Yes, I think that is a major concern, and one I would like to see addressed in terms of industry changes and the way that we have to. I recognize what they were trying to do in trying to limit resources, to certain regions so that you have to interact with other regions in order to get the things you want to get. I think that they hit wormholes too hard. I would love to see our moons be not so shite. Would be great. I would like to see them, even if we're just getting R8s or R816s, something better than what we've got. And I have some ideas about how that could be implemented without breaking the game and also introducing additional content for people to fight over. But that's, like I said, I'm going to put together a whole presentation about that at some point, and don't have enough time to talk about it all right now. But that is a concern and something that we are going to be addressing here, hopefully soon. Yadok, you are up. Hello, Yadek.
Hello.
How are you?
Not much.
Yeah, good. What can I do for you?
Where is my PI changes?
Your PI changes. Okay, so I'm going to group the PI change that you've talked about, and because I know this is important, and you are not the only person who's talked about it. I'm going to group this into a bunch of like quality of life improvements that are obvious, and we really wish they would address. They just have not done so yet. Being able to save formats in PI, so you're not doing the same thing over and over again, would be huge. Being able to do, I'm going to say the same thing applies to like the corporation management structure, which anybody who has ever done anything in the corporation management structure knows that it is a nightmare on a good day. Same thing applies to ACLs at a certain point, and honestly bookmarks too. These are all, a lot of them are, old systems integrating with new systems that have, a bunch of different, residual, hanger-ons that have just not been ever cleaned up. A lot of times they'll implement a new system, not get rid of a bunch of things that are still relevant to older systems, and then you have a lot of overlap. So PI is a nightmare to deal with right now. I hear this all the time. It is on my list of things that I would like to see done, just in terms of general quality of life improvements that that would just make people's lives better. But in terms of what is on the docket currently, that's not there yet. And again, the same thing I've been saying all day. It's just because of lack of time that we've had to been able to have these conversations with the devs. Tabs, you are up. Hello.
Hi, Mark. Can you hear me?
I can. How you doing?
I'm all good, thanks, mate. Hope you're good too.
I'm doing well. What's up?
Good. As you're aware, for a while now, people have chosen to stay away from running C4 anoms. Generally because of how far apart the spawns are, how inefficient it feels as well compared to, say, farming C3s and C5s.
Sure.
You can either put a lot of ISK on the line and jump in a Marauder to farm a C4, but then why not farm C5s? Or you can farm in, say, a group of dummies, but then the ISK return between the lot of you doesn't really bring in that much. So me and my corp tend to just leave the green sites unfarmed, really, which is a bit of a shame. So how would you like to see C4 PvE progress?
Sure. I will say that the one benefit maybe of the overabundance of and the Marauder spam that we've seen over the last couple of months has been that they, with the right setup, running those C4 sites is not nearly as much of a nightmare as it has been in the past, especially with Paladins, because of their range and the mobility of Marauders as a whole. That being said, I think it's kind of messed up that currently the best way to run C4 sites is with Marauders. I feel like especially for groups who are trying to get into wormholes, a lot of times they will go for C4s just because they are they are a lot of times a more approachable hole to get into, especially if you're a smaller corp who you don't have the same kind of access to a lot of capital pilots or capitals themselves. A lot of those people are flying battleship fleets. I mean, when we first got started, we flew fleets of Lashaks and Nesters, and that's how we made money for our corp right at the gate. It is, I feel like, an unnecessary burden on people to expect them to have to train into Paladins or any Tech 2 battleship for that matter to run their home sites, especially if you're in the C4. It makes sense to me that you have to have those to run C5 and C6 sites, and maybe even then it's a little overtuned, in favor of the crabs in that case. But I would adjust the spawn locations for sure, and probably adjust the payouts as well. I feel like either you need to make the sites less oppressive for the the money that they're kicking out, or have them kick out more money. But one way or the other, those spawn locations are bad, and they've been bad for a long time, and they need to get fixed. Lockley, you are up. Hello, friend. How are you?
Hey, Mark. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Welcome to the stage. What do you got?
At first, I want to say thank you for such optimistic start. It was
For sure.
nice to hear. But I have a question related to wormholes. I heard opinions and maybe think so myself that new year in CSM gonna be year about faction warfare, and best we can hope in wormholes is just echoes of global rebalances and maybe bug fixes. Do you think, or can you share, if wormholes should expect some changes that would be more interesting, I would say?
Right. Okay, so I'm going to answer this in two ways. The first way is by saying that no, none of you should expect anything. And I say that just because I myself do not expect anything. As much as I would like to be able to come in here and tell you all that we're going to accomplish everything we want to accomplish, that I don't feel like is realistic. CCP is a strange machine. The way that they work internally is very odd. It's unlike a lot of certainly unlike a lot of corporations I've ever worked for. And I get that same opinion from a lot of my fellow CSMs and some of the former CSMs. Certainly, there are some. I think Merkel Chen can probably expand upon this at length about how he feels about the way CCP works as a whole. I'm sure Exukis can say the same. However, so while I would say not to expect anything, I would also say that it is not outside of the realm of possibility for us to get something that is more than just bug fixes or minor balance changes. And I say that because, when the after the faction warfare update comes out, there's going to be some time that we're still going to be able to talk to some of the developers about these issues and about potential, upcoming content changes. So there will be time there, I feel like. And additionally, these conversations are already happening. I can tell you right now that I have had conversations, especially with CCP Aurora, who is you all don't know this, but CCP Aurora is effectively a saint at this point. The work that she's doing there right now is I mean, they need to build a statue of her at some point. But these are conversations that we are able to have with the devs and be able to pitch things. Whether or not we're going to see these things turn into anything, it's hard to say. But the work is ongoing, right? We are doing what needs to be done on our side to put these things in front of the devs. It's no secret that a lot of our concerns, especially our concerns from our friends in nullsec space, are much more in terms of the ecosystem and sort of how a lot of nullsec line members especially are being choked out because of the sorry state of their crabbing. That is a huge concern. The player count is a huge concern, but content is an overarching issue that comes up several times. Pando has spoken at length before internally about the state of content and new content. Kazanir has talked about what the end of the content curve looks like in nullsec and what the end of the content curve looks like in the game in general. A lot of those same principles echo into wormhole space too. These are all larger things that we have talked about. So in terms of what we can actually expect to get, I would say nothing. In terms of what is reasonable for us to get, there's a ton of stuff. A lot of it will depend on how, who we can get from CCP to listen to us, who we can get from CCP to understand, kind of where we're coming from, and how weird they want to get. And in my personal opinion, the vibe that I have gotten is that they are listening. Whether or not that's going to turn into anything actionable, again, extremely hard to say. But they are certainly listening. I mean, they're not blind to kind of where we're at right now as a whole, like the general state of the game. They have some, other opinions about why maybe we have gotten to that point. But I think that they recognize that there are concerns, and certainly they are looking for ideas about how to, maneuver in these waters. But again, saying anything more than that would just be speculation, and I don't want to waste anybody's time, pontificating about things I don't really know about. So, Floppy, welcome to the stage. You are up next. Hello, Floppy.
Hello. How's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
Not too bad.
Good. What you got?
So based on your obviously so far limited interactions with CSM, do you feel overall positive or negative about what CCP has planned over the short term to basically bump the player count up?
Oh, this is a tough one. I would say that the vibe that we have gotten, and this is just something that I feel personally, and not something that has been explicitly described to us. I feel like CCP very much is would like the faction warfare update to be a big deal. Not just because it has the potential to create new content for more players, and is a great way to get newer players, which they've clearly spent a lot of time catering to over the last couple of years, by trying to get new players in and reworking the MPE, which is is important. I want to say this too, because I know a lot of people are extremely concerned about CCP's seeming attempts to appeal to new players instead of veterans. The fact of the matter is, at a certain point, we do need to appeal to new players. Eve is an old game, and we need to be able to bring. And there are some people who have left the game and just are not going to come back for one reason or another. It is my personal opinion that I would very much like to see us attempt to reach the people who have gone but would be willing to come back. That is important to me personally, because I know a lot of those people and I really want them to come play the game again. But at the same time, that work is important. However, in terms of how to address the player count, I do feel like they are, they feel like the faction warfare update will help a lot. And beyond that, it's really hard to say, and it would be a lot of speculating on my part. We have heard some things that probably we are not allowed to talk about. As far as actually, I can tell you who can speak more about this than I can currently is Kazanir. You guys, if you do not know who Kazanir is, Kaz, you just got the invite. You can come on up whenever. Kaz is one of the Imperium CSM members. He is really, really smart. Kaz, what do you got?
Hey everybody. I'll talk a little bit to this question. Obviously, we're all really concerned, right? Everyone can see the PCU and that it sort of is in the tank versus just a couple of years ago, right? As I have tried to examine this problem, which was pretty much my big homework running for CSM, is trying to figure out what to do, right? Really what I've realized is that there's really a lot of big things pretty broken with the game in a way that people don't understand it, and that probably about half of them, the player base was responsible for breaking at some point in the past, 10 or 15 years. Because we thought at some point there were certain things that people thought were very overpowered, and then they ended up getting nerfed. And then we went on another couple of years, and there were a certain set of things that were very overpowered or popular, and those ended up getting nerfed. And many of those things just never ended up getting replaced, right? So I'm keen to try and figure that out and unwind some of those bad opinions that we also, the player base, have had, and get CCP on board with sort of undoing some of those changes. But also, we're super keen to avoid accidentally repeating that mistake and going, what is the current overpowered thing? Let's make sure to nerf it. Right. So we're looking at all of these sort of big ecosystem questions. I hope that we have some answers, but I think what you're going to see in the next couple months is us trying to do sort of talk to the player base and get everyone to come to a better understanding of how the game works and some of the changes we want to see, and bring people, try and get everybody on board with that, so CCP also can believe in a program that we all want. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I want to move to address this point too that you actually brought up, and I appreciate you coming up here to talk about that, Kazanir. There's one more thing to say about this. I have again gone on record about my disdain for balancing by inconvenience. I think a lot of people here can probably speak to the experience of doing something or playing the game in a certain way, and then if CCP feels like it is overtuned, they will just make that system extremely inconvenient or not fun in a way that is intended to drive people away from it. I don't feel like that is a healthy way to balance a game. I don't feel like that's a healthy way to make your game fun. I don't believe that the best way to make the game better is by making parts of it worse so that other people go do other things. That I feel like is a toxic road to go down. And I think we are all sort of more or less on the same page about that. And we've seen examples of that in the past. I mean, hell, at a certain point, moon mining and wormholes, that. I mean, you can still do it. You can still anchor Athenors. You can still, blast moon rocks. But it is a negative endeavor at this point. There's just no money in it. So by making it extremely inconvenient to moon mine and wormholes, they've effectively killed it, which killed rorquals in wormholes and blah 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 blah. So yes, this is an ongoing concern, something that we're all actively working on. And thankfully, like I said, Kaz has kind of been leading the charge, especially on the PCU, which I know is on a lot of people's minds right now. Zeeks, you are back up. Hello, friend. How are you?
Thanks. I have one small question.
Go for
What's the feeling on ganking? Because I know that that's always kind of the new player experience.
Yeah. Okay. So ganking. I'm not actually sure. I'd have to go back and look and see, because we actually had a conversation about this fairly recently, in terms of CCP's official position on ganking and how it relates to harassment, because there is a line there between what is how do I even say this? Actions taken by players specifically to target other players and elicit a reaction in a way that is suspected to be harmful to that player. In terms, I think the official position, at least as far as I'm concerned, and somebody can fact check me on this if I'm wrong, other CSMs, I don't know if this is something that has changed, but the official position is ganking is still part of the gameplay. But there is a line in there somewhere in terms of what they what they perceive as hostile, malicious actions by some players against other individuals. I think sometimes this relates to streamers, because they're just trying to bait out a negative response one way or the other. But in terms of whether or not they're going to take ganking away from us, no, we have not gotten that impression. There's no secret cabal, I believe, of. In fact, I think this was explicitly stated as something that we can talk about recently. There is no secret cabal of CCP GMs back there trying to take ganking out of the game because they don't like complaining about it. That simply just does not exist. If there is another long-term plan of some dastardly action that they're planning to remove ganking as an aspect of the game, that has not been revealed to us, and I at this point don't believe that it would exist. So you should be safe to continue to gank to your heart's content, at least as far as I know. So okay, queue is empty. If anybody has anything else, it's up at your leisure. I know there have been some questions coming up, and actually I'm going to do this. I'm going to answer. There were a handful of questions that came up in the CSM questions channel here. Anybody who's paying attention in our Discord or in my Discord here, you'll probably see that there are an abundance of questions I just haven't gotten to yet. There are a lot, and people have a lot of questions, and that's all well and good. We would really like to. I would like to address as many of them as possible. However, howdy, there are a lot, and so you'll just have to. I beg your patience, but let's see what we can get to here. Let's see. Fubbleskag wants to know, update the ESI to bookmarks. There are a lot of concerns about the ESI and how the ESI works. I think this is an ongoing issue, maybe that is being addressed. I don't know if it's considered a priority right now, but it is something that they are certainly aware of. Daz wanted to know, going forward, is there going to be any new faction trigs or new factions, etc., coming to the game to add a new dynamic? I don't know, and even if I did know, this would probably not be something we'd be able to talk about at this point, unfortunately. Although I would say that would be super cool. Kyler Blackwell wants to know, will you be pushing CCP to remove rapid light missile launchers from the Wolf 4 bonus, if at all technically possible? I will say I've memed pretty hard about this one because it makes one specific director from Singularity Syndicate extremely angry, and that's very funny to me. But no, this is probably not a priority on my part currently. Vincent wanted to know, did CCP say anything about handling the doxing of CSM candidates? This is not something that has come up. They did do, at least as far as we can tell, their due diligence in making sure that information was removed from the Internet Archive and from their own systems. They have certainly made it seem like they are putting in the work to ensure that kind of thing does not happen again. But as far as an official statement, I don't believe we've ever gotten anything like that. Daz wants to know, 26 pallies at 2k DPS equals 52k DPS. What's the counter? Still working on that one. Don't really know for sure. I'll get back to you. Drac on Chasteau wants to know about moons and wormholes and how it would be to have decent wormhole moons. And I agree. I wish our moons were better. I feel this way in general about a lot of things, especially when people start talking about nerfing blue loot, which for the record is not something that I have advocated for or intend to advocate for. However, that being said, I do feel like the fact that blue loot is the only way to make money in wormholes right now is extremely stale, and I wish there were other options, especially for our industry folks. It sucks that most of the industrialists and miners have been driven out of JSpace just because it sucks for... it makes the game really one-dimensional. You're either a crab or you're hunting crabs, and that sucks, and we don't like it. Or I don't like it anyway. So I would like to see that some adjustments there. And if we get into those meetings, I certainly will be the first in line to talk about how we could reintroduce some of that content back to JSpace. Kale Kaderu wants to know, do we have a sense of how CCP feels the removal of a timer from medium structures is going? Is that coming up in CSM discussions? Not explicitly, maybe in terms of general feedback internally within the CSM about some of the balance changes recently, but this is not something that has come up yet. I really want this to come up because I want to address it, and I have a lot of strong opinions about it. But unfortunately, it is not something we've had a chance to talk about at length here before too long. I think we're going to have the opportunity to talk to like CCP Ritati about some of the larger ecosystem issues. And this is definitely one that is near and dear to my heart. So I'll probably try to address it then. Rain wants to know, Logion Killmails win. Oh boy. I have one director who is really, 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 really interested in this question too. I don't have an answer for this. I wish I did. I think Logi pilots are currently not given the credit that they deserve on Killmails, and I wish there was an option for them to be better represented. Currently, it does not exist. It is something that is, at least people know about it. It has been memed about in the past, and we'd like to get this one taken care of as well. Strids wants to know, maybe not wormhole related, but more in general. Right-click menu is broken since like a week ago. When right-clicking mid-warp, the warp 2 option won't appear after you exit warp and hover over another bookmark. You now have to exit the right-click menu and bring it up again to make it update properly to get the warp option CCP fixed, please. I feel like this has maybe been brought up to them. I don't know if they are working on a solution to it just yet, but I believe this is something that they are aware of. Happy says, how do we as a community get more corps to give wormhole space a try and enter our ecosystem instead of just joining a null block? Well, I have a lot of ideas about that are less having to do with how CCP interacts with the player base and more about how we, the players, interact with each other. there are concerns right now about groups that are going around and evicting smaller corporations, especially ones that are perceived to be easy targets, and just taking their stuff. And there are a lot of people who are unhappy about it, and who maybe groups who would be willing to give Wormholes a shot to move out here and try and attract more members themselves. But a lot of times they don't have the resources and capital. I can tell you that there are a handful of groups right now who are actively trying to set up defensive agreements with a lot of those smaller groups to put them in a position where they don't feel like they can just be muscled out of JSpace. My group certainly is involved in that. TurboFeed Glory kind of leading the head of that right now. I think Singularity Syndicate has a process that they're setting up right now, where smaller groups can bat phone if they feel like they're trying to be muscled out, and we can get people out there to to help their defensive option, or increase their defensive options. So I think that this is something that is specific to the player base. I feel like this is something that we need to make an effort of ourselves to put Wormholes in a healthier position. And this is not something I think that we can just ask CCP for a fix and get a fix. I think at a certain point, some of the responsibility for this has to come back to us. Dark Ashy says, are there any plans to address or reverse the changes in ore distribution towards Wormholes or K-Space in general? It would certainly help to increase the self-sufficiency that a lot of Wormholers love, and unlock T2 production from being something of null only, or something that would need to be sourced from trade hubs, or for those of us with no access, or is the intention for players to need to foray into space outside of the chosen HQ? I can tell you that right now, the way the game is set up, it certainly wouldn't seem like the latter is their intent, that they would like us to continue to have to interact with other regions of space and hurt self-sufficiency to a certain extent. I think that whether or not we have gotten no feedback, at least as far as I'm concerned. As far as I know, we have not gotten any major feedback from this yet. This is a question that I know for a fact is going to come up during the ecosystem talks that we're going to have in the next couple of weeks and months. I really want to see this addressed, because there's such an opportunity when we're talking about ways to create content inside of JSpace that we currently do not have. I've talked a lot about how I would really like to see Rorquals back in JSpace. We don't have any of those right now. That is something that is near and dear to my heart, and I really want to see that addressed. I'm going to continue to work on these questions, but before I do that, I know Eddie has been waiting. Eddie, I'm going to invite you up to the stage. You should have gotten that invitation. Eddie, hello.
Hey man, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Not too bad.
Welcome to the stage. What do you got?
Thank you very much. Well, basically, I've got only one question. I want a PvP.
Yes.
I don't know if I missed something or not, but what's being done, or I don't know, how do you put it differently? What are the odds that we're gonna see more PvP active people, or content that actually forces people to PvP in the future? Because I want to get clapped.
Yeah. Okay. So this is like number one, right? Like we actually recently had a conversation where we talked about how important PvP is to the game, and there is an ecosystem in place here where they need to strike a balance between people who play the game specifically for PvE and people who play the game specifically for PvP. I can tell you right now, the faction warfare update is hopefully going to be great for PvP outside of JSpace, or maybe inside of JSpace too. If people have low set connects, they can go interact with these groups with. It is one of those things where it's like the elephant in the room, right? We can sit here and talk all day long about the player count and the state of the economy, and what we're all trying to get back to is the fact that at a certain point, if there aren't people playing the game and there aren't more people out in space, then there's not going to be more PvP. And it's a PvP game. It is a It it markets itself as a PvP game. We're all here because of our experiences with PvP in the past. Like the PvP in EVE Online is just different, and it's honestly better. Even in the kind of sorry state the game is in now, it's still better than a lot of other games out there. So, to answer your question, it is a major concern, and is at the top of a lot of people's, especially if you want to talk about people who have made it sort of a pet project to talk about PvP. Pando is really got the hand on the reins right now about that one. Pando is a content creator. He runs a lot of fleets for the initiative, and runs some public fleets too. And being able to get more people in space and find more ways to create content between groups and introduce these kind of points where that content can start to bubble up is a primary concern for him, and it is for the rest of us too. This is the thing that we keep coming back to. But in the short term, as far as what their plans are outside of faction warfare, we don't have anything outside of speculation currently. Going back to CSM questions, let's see here. Where did I leave off? Yes, Apollo Okoski wants to know, was a permit issued for this meeting? Thank you for the members of the Wormhole Police who are here tonight. My permit is in the mail. I guess you guys have to check. We'll have to come back to that one. Widow-san wants to know, under current or achievable mechanics, what is your ideal wormhole ecosystem? I don't want to talk too much at length about this because I've done a lot of, I've conversed about this more so during the campaign process. But in short, what I would really like to do, really like to see in JSpace is an abundance of groups, especially medium to small groups that are able to interact with each other in a way where there are, a good mix of fights happening, people who are able to make money in a consistent way, while also, being at risk. I mean, the fact of the matter is, you can make a ton of money in JSpace. The money out here is extremely good. That's why so many nullset crabs are coming to JSpace. At the same time, there has to be risk involved with that, and I think that risk inherently will make the game more interesting, will make more people want to come to JSpace because of how good the money is. And people who will want to come to JSpace because they know that other people will be coming to JSpace for the crabbing. That being said, I also want to try and see us get away from the eviction meta that has kind of driven most of the major PvP content over the last couple of years, and honestly even before that as well. We have some ideas. I've pitched some ideas in the Wormholer Discord and Praise Bob about some things that have been pitched before by previous CSM groups and previous groups of wormholers who have been had the ear of the CSM. Captator, who is here right now. I don't know if he's here right now. I think he's here right now. He was here a few minutes ago because he sent a comment in. Has been integral into in assembling some of those thoughts in the past. Has been a really great resource, and a lot of my personal feelings about how we can create new points of content, points of conflict between groups, relies heavily on some of those ideas that have already been pitched in the past. This is something I'm probably going to put out a presentation here in the next couple of weeks about what I would like to see done in terms of, any major content things. I can tell you right now that I believe that they are achievable under current mechanics and don't need anything crazy, new from the developers to introduce. Especially since if we were relying on something crazy and new at this point, it is hard to imagine we would get it with any kind of timeliness. So what we have in mind is much more focused on what we can achieve, what we can get, and how we can introduce the most bang for our buck, basically. Lily Arzin wants to know, can CCP introduce some cheaper subs so I can justify playing 2 to 3 times a month? I have just the other day asked for a meeting with the commerce team about this, because I really want to know if the sub increase is doing what they expected it to do, and if that justifies the loss of PCU. I can tell you right now that there is still the option available to sub your alts at a lower cost. At least it was last time I checked. Hopefully they have not taken this out. Sub your alts at a lower cost than your main. So in a perfect world, you would be paying effectively the same for all of your subs, except for one, which would be paying $5 more a month for. That is not something that you can apply automatically currently, which is pretty messed up. And I have asked about that as well too, and have been assured that we're going to have a meeting, or I'm going to be able to talk to somebody in the marketing team about that and why that's not something that's in the that we can do currently. Because in my mind, what should be the case is if you're going to introduce a system where people can group all of their accounts under the same email address, and you're just going to give them a bonus for all of their alts, and just make them pay a higher fee for their main, then that needs to be something that can apply automatically every month to people who pay monthly. Currently it isn't, and I think it's kind of busted. Anemone says, as an option, do you believe moving blue loot from sites into Avengers to minor suppress Marauders but incentivize Dread? Yeah. This is a really hard one for me because I like the idea that people are able that better wormhole loot is more accessible to more people, because I feel like it makes it puts people in ships, it keeps people in ships, and it does not lock out the best stuff in J space loot wise to just people who have kind of the more extensive dread supports and Fortizars in their farms and so on and so forth. But at the same time, I'm not going to say that I'm advocating for this, but I would like to see something along these lines done at some point in the future to try and balance out the overabundance of Marauders right now. I don't know if you guys have seen the Marauder figures recently. Marauder losses are Marauders in space are at a massive all-time high, whereas dreads killed are have hit rock bottom effectively, and that's no good. We need more dreads in space. Dreads are fun to kill, and people like big kill males. Nadefart says, if when will gas huffing drones be added? I want this. I don't know when it's going to come in, if we're going to get it, but it's something that I've talked about in the past, because I really want to see gas become a much bigger deal in the wormholes. I like to see us have more gas. I like the gas to be more valuable, and I would really like to see more gas wars as a result. That sounds super cool to me. But in terms of when we'll get something like that, I don't have anything for you currently. Let's see. Zach Sluffle says, are they aware of the bug when you change the probe filter and it doesn't update? I don't know if they know about this, and actually I don't know if I knew about this. DM me when you get the chance with some more information about this, and if you've submitted a bug report already, send me the bug report name, and we'll talk more about this after that. Captator, the man, the myth, says, how is the progress on getting the new modern UI elements to UX parity with what they have been used to replace? The icons/text are too large, don't scale down to small enough, have unnecessary padding, and display markedly less information in the more space than before. For example, character and skill sheet abomination. Yes. Okay. So I don't know what the progress looks like. I do know that they are actively working on this. They have a UI UX team that is only really working extensively on Photon. They're I know that they have a bunch of big ideas and big dreams for how Photon is going to develop in the future. I know that they see it as a work in progress. Outside of that, I don't know too much more about what's being done there. Grubus says doesn't like the new skill sheet. Yeah, I'm kind of at a mixed bag about it. I don't hate it, but I feel like it could be better. Just check and see. Okay, next up, Solargraph says T3 freighters, please. It's a really interesting question. I don't even know what a T3 freighter would look like, but I like your enthusiasm, so I'm with you so far. Alexander Kurielis says T2 Edencom ships Plox. I think we need to get. There are a handful of T2 ships I would like to see already. I really want to see T2 Lashak at some point, either as I really prefer it as a Blops. I don't think we need another Marauder that can kick out 6,000 DPS. It's probably less than ideal. But that would be cool. And there are a whole tier of ships out there right now that are not being used. They do not have T2 hulls, and those are the tier 3 battleships. Those being the Roke, the Abaddon, the Hyperion, and the other one, the Minmatar one that doesn't roll off the tip of my tongue just yet. You know the one. It's this big tall boy. He's got things sticking up and sticking down. The name escapes me. But those battleships all could use. Arsia is going to ream me for this. I know it as a fact. Those battleships could all use more love. I'd love to see them get T2 variants because they don't have them currently. And Maelstrom, thank you, Arsia. I appreciate it. The Maelstrom. I would love to see them get T2 variants. There has been some talk in the past. I know Stitch Caneland has done some work about on pitching what a potential T2 version of those might look like in his Fortress Battleship idea. That's something that could be considered. There have been some propositions in the past about what it would look like if you broke up the Marauder and turned it into 2 different kind of ships that do effectively the same thing that the Marauder does, but not all in the same ship. There are a bunch of different ideas. And these are all things that I would like to see looked at in the future, mostly because I think more ships are important. I mean, I think introducing more ships and getting more ships is exciting to people. I know people get hyped when they see that there are new ships that they haven't seen before, and that brings people back to the game too. We have had some feedback about the prospect of introducing new ships. I wouldn't say that it is not an option, but at the same time, I don't think it's a priority right now. Unfortunately, I wish it was. Apollo, thank you for issuing that citation. I'll be sure to look for it in the mail. Titanium Ultra says, any thoughts about modifying stats of existing ore line ships to better suit them for wormholes and possibly vital mining in wormholes in the future? As a pure example, modifying the signature radius of the Orca. That's funny. A couple people have asked about the signature radius of the Orca recently. I would say as a whole, my personal thoughts, I would like to see more mining industrial ships in J-Space, period. Whether or not that's something that we're going to get positive feedback from the devs about is not something I can speculate on at this point, just because we haven't had a chance to talk about it. I would like to. That would be cool, but not yet. Dark Case, is any chance for a T3C trig ship? I would also like this. I think I really like the, I think that the trig line, the trig line is kind of hard though, right? The same thing with the Edencom line, because they only have the one type. And I guess drones, you could put drones on them too, but I think this is not something that I'm saying officially as a CSM. This is not something I've ever heard speculated on. We'll probably get trig drones before we would get trig T3C, just because I don't think that they have any plans for it in currently. And trig drones would be kind of cool. But again, not something that there's, this is spoken simply as me, Mark Resurrectus, not me, Mark Resurrectus, the CSM. Pink says, do you know if CCP is happy with the current state of Bastion? 30 seconds, Boucherable can take Hull Wall and Bastion. As a J-Space representative, are you happy with the current state? I don't know if CCP is happy with the current state of Bastion. I have got the impression that they are not satisfied with it, but I don't know if that means that they are unhappy with it. I do know that I am not happy with it. I have some ideas about Bastion that I think would make Bastion a more interesting module without making it no longer, feasible in PvP or PvE rather, but would make PvE engagements a little bit more interesting. That being said, that's not something that we have had a chance to talk to at length about. So, Ed Curver says, what happened to the Trig DST that was tested or that was teased? Good question. I don't know. They haven't mentioned it. Haven't come up. Would be kind of cool to get that. I mean, again, just because I think more ships are better. It's nice to have ships. But this is not something that we've heard too much about currently. Hawk says, what makes you think that the CSM has any effect on the state of the game at all? We have seen over time that CCP really doesn't care about CSM input. Clearly, we see this with the PCU. I disagree. And I think that this doesn't have anything to do with the PCU. I think that the issue with the PCU has more to do with decisions CCP made that are that do not necessarily. I think that it is not so simple as just saying they didn't listen to the CSM and then the PCU got back. I think that the PCU becoming what it is now is more of a it is a variety, or it is a culmination of a lot of changes made over time, and some of those changes I think were probably promoted by the CSM in the past. And you know, this is I know people have a lot of concerns about the how do I even say this? People have concerns about whether or not the CSM is a legitimate organization, right? And whether or not we're actually able to achieve anything and get anything done. And I know that by sitting here and saying, you know, yes, of course, you know, believe us, everything, you know, we can make changes happening. A lot of that sounds just like a cop out, because of course I would say that. I want people to think that I'm still effective in my job, and the rest of us feel the same way. At the same time, I have not gotten any impression during my admittedly brief time as a CSM that we are not capable of affecting real change in the game. I feel like they, if nothing else, they are listening. They recognize the state that we're in currently. And I mean, there are people there right now who do not, you know, people who have played the game, who love Eve and have loved Eve for a long time, and none of them want the game to go belly up. They have different ideas about how they could potentially get there, different ideas about how, you know, they could potentially, you know, realize a more healthy game state. But I don't believe it's just as simple as them saying, well, we don't really care about what the CSM thinks. I don't believe that. I feel like that is much too simple as an answer to a very complicated question. But at the same time, I don't want to make it sound lambasting you or anything here. It's a reasonable thing to ask because, you know, of everything. You know, people, and you're not the only person who has had this concern. I'm just gonna my boys in the Anger Games right now are about to win this game against Volta. Sorry, Volta, but oh my gosh, I'm so hyped. I do believe that, you know, people have these concerns and they are legitimate concerns. So I don't want you to think that you know, this is an issue where we are you know, we think that, oh no, our job is fine, everything's fine, don't worry about it. You don't have any reason to be concerned. You do have reason to be concerned. And we're working hard to try and alleviate those concerns as well. Lord Omega says, any chance of getting Surgical Strike reverted all the way? And then Legion Loki buffs. Okay, Legion and Loki Power Grid buffs has not come up, but that sure would be nice. Chance of getting Surgical Strike reverted all the way, unlikely. I can go into some more depth about this later, but the long and short of it is there are some systems that were implemented during Surgical Strike that I feel like they would be unwilling to change now. That would be kind of like pivotal to when we talk about revert Surgical Strike. This is the kind of thing that we would say, you know, it's not reverted until you do this, and they are unlikely to revert that. Without really getting into the specifics of that, because some of that has to do with conversations I've had with CCP that I can't talk about. You know, I think that they are aware of the balance concerns that came out of Surgical Strike. They certainly have heard me talk about it at length. But what we would be seeing to kind of alleviate some of those concerns, we don't have anything new for you yet about that. I would love the Legion and Loki to get, by the way, just FYI. I love the Legion. This is well established, and I wish it was better, even though it's already very good. So maybe I don't wish it was better. I do wish it was better. Dabs a lot says, do you know when we will have follow-up paraphernalia that we can pack this test bong with? I don't. That's interesting. I did not recognize that was interesting. Okay, I did not know about that. Big One says Orca and the Porpoise need a complete once over. I feel like this is the case with a lot of ships in that fill kind of those similar roles, kind of tertiary ships that are important for the functions that maybe they were not originally intended to do, but at the same time are still they are needed for a certain specific function, and they're not really their use in that area is a little funky right now. Whether or not we're going to get that, really hard to say. I don't know for sure. I wish I had a better answer to that one. Cap says, have you advocated for the delete all drones placed with fighter mechanics and only allow them on dedicated drone boats? Line of discourse yet, Mark? If not, why not? The answer is no, and the reason is I did not realize that was something that we were interested in. I will have to look more into that because that's interesting, and probably would make a lot of people very angry. When it comes to talking about potential changes to the game, just so everybody is kind of in the knows what my approach is, there are a lot of things that I think are kind of a cool idea that are weird and would make the game certainly different. I also don't want my tires to get slashed, so certain things I think are neat, but I would certainly never advocate for, because I like having, again, unslashed tires, and only allowing drones on drone boats, dedicated drone boats with fighter mechanics, might be one of the ones that does that. So we'll certainly have that talk later, I think. Cinnamon Hamster says, you mentioned wanting more valuable gas available. Does this mean adding gas to wormholes or creating new types of gas to put specifically in wormholes? I don't know what my preferred option here would be, and I don't think that I am the expert that is needed to discuss this. There are certainly other industry experts that know more about how this could be better balanced, but I do know that CCP has made a point of saying that if you're going to talk about diversifying resources in different regions and making certain things only available in some regions, they put gas in wormholes for a specific reason. They wanted to make gas like a specific wormhole thing. Then that should be a specific thing. I mean, you can make you should be able to make pretty good money mining in K space. By the same token, I feel like you should be able to make pretty good money huffing gas in J space. And the fact that the biggest limitations on that right now are usually the size of gas clouds and the resource collection rate, and honestly the size of ships that huff gas. These are all concerns and things that I would like to see addressed at some point. Calrex says, thoughts on increasing the risk of bonus waving. Hang on a second, I'm getting a ping. From Captator. Very good. Let's see here. Says, thoughts on increasing the risk of bonus waving. Right now, people can caps at 500,000 out there, and there's virtually no risk while Marauders go boom. Man, this is kind of a tough one. I think in the short term, this is probably not a priority, just because of the copious amount of other things that are a major concern right now for us. At the same time, I think it's putting a closer limit on it would probably not be the end of the world. But at the same time, I'll tell you the same thing that I tell my guys whenever they get bonus wave, because they do, because they sometimes just turn off brain. Make sure you got eyes on the fort. Just put eyes on the fort. If you don't have the tunes to do it, that is unfortunate, but I think a lot of these concerns can be alleviated with putting eyes on the fort, because it still needs that carrier still got undocked somewhere. That's not really a great answer. Maybe not the answer anyone was looking for, but it's just not something that has been. It has not been a critical issue yet, so it's not really something we've been talking about. Hawk, follow-up question. Speaking on the rapidly declining PCU record load numbers, do you know of anything that CCP is acting on currently to remediate the situation? Perhaps a sub-price adjustment, or literally anything that was promised to blow us away at FanFest that seemingly is non-existent? Those are all great questions. As far as perhaps a sub-price adjustment, This is something that maybe I'll know more about after I have the chance to talk to the marketing and commerce teams, but I've not had the opportunity to have that conversation yet. CCP in the summer is a slow animal, and they are collecting a lot of information right now. They no doubt have seen the PCU declining. They recognize, I think, that there is an issue there. Whether or not they see it as the same kind of issue that we do as the player base is not something that I know for sure, but certainly is something that needs to be taken into consideration. Whether or not they are planning something to try and remediate the situation, I don't know. I wish I knew. I am actively working. This is like the thing that I am actively working on right now, is trying to figure out. I think all of us are, to a certain extent, trying to find out what their plan is to pull us out of the nosedive. It's been a little bit better, honestly, the last couple of days. Not to make an excuse or anything, but I think there are a number of reasons that could that could have come up. I think the the promotion of Asher to the initiative, or not the initiative, the Imperium big chair has probably brought some folks back to the game, not just in the Imperium but elsewhere too. There have certainly been a lot of heated conversations about player groups over the last couple of weeks. That I think some of that has started to settle. But in terms of what CCP's plans are, difficult to say. And I wish I had a better answer, because this is like the thing that I've spent the most time on talking about recently, and we don't really have anything just yet. Tab said Phantomite suggested for NPC stations to have their jump clone timer removed, or for the timer to be reduced drastically in order to reduce Citadel spam, as well as encourage groups to live in NPC stations. Is that something that you have heard mentioned before? The answer is yes, we've heard it mentioned before. And as anything beyond that, I cannot talk about because of the NDA. Thalos says freighter or freighter-like ships to ease logistics for wormholes with more space than a DST. I mean, the Orca does exist. It's not a good. It's not. I mean, that's not weird. Fact is, this is probably not something that we're going to get anytime soon. This would be a thing that they would do with the Trig DST, but again, this is not something that has come up. And I mean, I understand the desire for it, but at the same time, there are ships that do that, and the DST is not that bad. I understand when to move, more stuff in more quickly. And right now, there's a solution to that, is move to high class, and then you can move freighters in. There's not really a better solution for it currently. I get where you're coming from, but it has not come up yet. Nick Bison, hey Nick, says, thought, instead of new wormhole mining ships that will just get used in cave space, how about a set of wormhole effects that only apply to ore ships? I have asked this question with a different ship type in the past, and I've not gotten a conclusive answer on it. I think that it is probably unlikely that this is something that they would be able to do, or something they would even be willing to do, just because of how the balance requirements for that. But there's not a definite answer here. So I've got two more questions here. Anybody who wants to get a question in before we cut this off, we've got about 12 minutes left until we've hit the 2-hour mark. I'll take a handful more, and then we'll go ahead and cut it off. And then, of course, we can do follow-up questions and DMs later after the fact. I'm probably going to try and be publishing things more frequently too, including the big content thing that I had talked about earlier in a presentation here before too long. However, I know people have stuff going on today. I myself have stuff going on today. So we want to try and wrap this up as soon as we can. Gideon says, this is a response to tabs. Okay. That is in the pipeline as far as I know. Again, not something I can talk about due to the NDA currently. Do with that what you will. Sudakon says reduced session timer. Somebody else in my own group, I think, recently asked about this. I don't know what the limitations are for this, and if this is something that they would be considering, if it was something that would put undue stress on the server. But this is I feel like a thing that is not. I think this is a pretty popular idea. I wish this was a thing. I hate session timers myself because I'm very bad at it. And this actually goes into the next thing that Rild says, which is change pods while in ships, please. Yeah, I sure would like that because I'm really bad about remembering to leave ships to change pods. Then I always get really frustrated when I cannot change pods and I don't understand why. And then it's because my brain is exceptionally smooth and glossy. So yes, those are both things I would like. Maybe we'll come up at some point. But again, if I had to speak honestly, probably fairly low on the priority list right now. So Vice Solis says, any signs from the UI UX team about making undock button larger or adding bright colors and contrast to it, or perhaps make it flashy? That's not a terrible. That is a funny point. No, nothing that we've heard directly. However, that's a good idea. I might bring that up to the UX team if I get the chance to talk to them. I do think it needs to be bigger. I don't know why it's so small right now. And especially if you are multi-boxing, tiny little buttons are kind of a pain because you're clicking around. So yeah, I'm on board with that. Certainly make a bigger undock button. Maybe change the color of it to make it stand out a little bit more. Nick Steele says, is your vision for wormholes to make them self-sufficient? From what I've heard, I haven't lived in one yet. Wormholes live in them in spite of the mechanics, and CCP's vision was to not have their CCP's vision was to not have them be their own self-sufficient thing. And what you've said it so far, it seems like they just wanted to make sure I have the right idea. Okay, so this sometimes comes up as a question when people talk about, well, CCP never been intended for people to live in wormholes. As far as I can tell, just by virtue of information that was available at the time, this is just patently false. They never intended people to not live in wormholes. There's evidence to suggest there was a lore reason for people to live in wormholes. I don't know if they maybe had intended for them to be us wormholers to be as entrenched as we are now. Maybe it's just a factor of scale, but I certainly believe that they had intended at some point for people to be able to move into J space. As far as self-sufficiency, I mean, this is the same thing that applies everywhere, right? You can't make capitals in K space without wormhole gas. And in K space, you can't build T2 ships without stuff that you can get from K space. So it's not, it's more of an issue of logistics, I think, than anything else. But at the same time, there are reasons why you would want to limit some resources to certain regions and make them only able to get there, so people can't just lock out, or people can't just kind of wall up in their own space and never have to move anything ever from any other regions. At the same time, this is one where I wish there were more options in J space, because being able to have an abundance of resources in J space, in order to that is a road towards more content, right? Every new resource that you have that is worthwhile for people to fight over is going to add these little moments of interactions between groups. And if you have people out mining, if you have people out huffing gas, if you have Rorquals in J space, these are all things that people can interact with, and then those are potential areas where fights can start. Right now, fights start because people either randomly run into each other, they arrange fights, or they're hunting crabs. And those, very rarely are they as organic as, hey, somebody is over here trying to get this resource, let's go stop them from doing that or take the resource for ourselves. Resource wars are great content. And in J space, it's really just not a thing unless you count crabs, but I don't, for different reasons. So let's see here. Yes, thank you, Sophia. I appreciate it. Let's see. Lord Omega says, what are your thoughts on limiting storage space in citadels It's a really interesting point. This is another hard one to talk about because I don't think there's anything in the works for this. And I do worry at a certain point that CCP has gone a little bit too far currently. And this one would be a hard one to walk back if they ever wanted to. We haven't heard anything about this, obviously. I know it's come up when people talk about making citadels less oppressive, and this, feeds back into power projection. At the same time, boy, this would be rough to balance for some, especially some older citadels that are just absolutely chock full of stuff. I don't have a good answer for this one right now. I'll probably look more into it in the next couple of weeks and see if they have. And the issue of power projection is kind of a wide ranging concern. There are probably other ways to address it too. Well, this is one I just have to keep my ear to. Mindless says, speaking of small buttons, is there any talk of allowing smaller UI scaling options for players on lower monitors? Probably. I only say that because that seems like the common sense thing to do. Whether or not that's something that the UX UI team is working on actively would be speculating on my part at this point. I don't know for sure. I wish it was true. It would make sense if it were true, but I don't know. Gideon says, fatigue to jump bridges win. Oh boy. I mean, this is something that so here's what I'm going to tell you about jump bridges as a whole. And like antiplexes and stuff. I am not probably the person to ask about it. Because they don't get used by, put to you like this. In terms of the wide ranging implications of adding fatigue to jump bridges, I'm not the authority. I think that when it comes to power projection, I think limiting power projection is not a crime. At the same time, I do think it is, something that needs to be handled out in a calculated way. Because again, this goes back to what I was saying before. When you talk about balancing by inconvenience, it is not, in my opinion, it is not prudent to balance a game by making some systems just less fun to use. And fatigue, effectively, it's just a less fun to use thing because it just makes you not play the game for a little while. How that would be balanced, how that would be implemented, again, I wish I knew more about this. I certainly have colleagues who can tell you more, but I don't have a lot of options or a lot of answers to this one right now. I have two more questions, or one more question here. Wex, this will be the last one for today. Wex says, what could be good changes that can help motivate small groups to live in J space and not join a big wormhole group and just add numbers? Most of wormhole space is empty and hard for newer small groups to find fights that are not 4-5 or 10-5 or just ganking ratters. I can see that already there are some of my own people here saying Turbo is recruiting. Don't pay attention to that. That's not really, obviously you can pay attention to that if you want to. That's not the point of this. I would say that if we really want to see more people in space, which I do, the way we accomplish this is by, on the CCP side, by introducing a greater variety of resources for groups to interact with. Give people ways to make money that are not just crabbing. Give people ways to build ships that are not just haul in resources from K space. There are a lot of different options here, a lot of different systems that we could put in place that they just have not in the past. And at the same time, we need to be better as a community, as a wormhole community, about not just, if you, there's no reason to not, you don't need a reason to evict somebody, to be clear. I don't believe that you need a reason to evict somebody. At the same time, I think we need to be more careful as a community about who we decide to evict. We need to, these groups that are, going around and evicting smaller, lower effort targets just because there are a few people in the corp and then blobbing them with 70, 80 ships. this is unhealthy. I mean, this is not great. I've said it before. I think that if you really want to evict somebody, pick a target your own size, or fight somebody else your own size. Don't be, there's no reason that 3 or 4 alliances need to swing into a corp with 20 active tunes and knock over their stuff. There's just no reason for it, and it's toxic for JSpace. This is something that if your group feels like you're in this position, please reach out to me. I can put you in touch with people who are working on trying to balance this specific concern. But in terms of not just work that we can do on our side, but also work that CCP can do. I think JSpace just needs more variety. It needs more than just blue loot and more than just hunting crabs. And I think once we could get to that point, there's a lot for people to like in JSpace. And JSpace offers you things you cannot get outside of JSpace. And that appeals to a lot of people. In a different scenario, I would really like to see them put more effort into that. But again, and not to go back to the same thing I've been saying all day, but we haven't had a lot of chance to talk about it, and we are probably unlikely to see anything major, if at all, until at least after the faction warfare update. So, ta-da, that's it. Okay, so I'm going to call it there. Once again, I really appreciate you guys all coming out to do this. We're going to try and do this once every month. I'll probably do one again at the end of August if the timing works out. In the meantime, if you have any questions for me, you can reach me on Discord. My username is DJ Cactus, #0001. That's DJ Cactus with K's instead of C's, by the way. Additionally, you can reach out to me in game, Mark Resurrectus, or you can write to my email. My personal email is executor@turbofeedorglory.com. Additionally, if you're not in the CSM Discord, there is an official CSM Discord where there are public channels. You can interact with us there. We're usually pretty good about talking to people in those channels. So that would be the place I would go to if I were you. If you really want to, have a better range to talk to more of us. I know that there are a lot of people here who are already there, which is great. And yeah, that's all I've got. I thank you so much for this, guys. I'm going to make this available on our YouTube channel here before too long. Thanks again to Talking Stations for coming out and streaming for us. Rain, you guys are great. Really appreciate that. And of course, again, to all of my fellow CSMs who showed up, really appreciate your attendance and the effort. We're working hard, guys. We really believe in Eve. I personally really believe in Eve, and we'll continue to do so until there's no reason to. So you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a good night. Eve. I guess it's not morning.